Good morning and welcome to your favorite Friday morning podcast, Conversation with Buddy, brought to you by The Rec, way more than a bowling alley. And like I say every week, bring your friends, family, your coworkers down and have a great time. It's fun, it's affordable, it's safe. We also do a ministry here called Valor Mentoring. So if you want to learn more about that, we'd love to share that with you as well. This morning, I have a guest. He'll be a new friend. We've never met before, so this will be kind of fun. And his name's Tim Wasko. Welcome, Tim.
Hey, appreciate it. Excited to be on.
Dude, we're here, man.
We are.
So we'll just have a conversation and we'll learn more about Tim.
All right.
So let me do a quick intro of you, Tim, so people get to know who you are, and then we'll dive in. I got some good questions for you.
Okay.
So, all right, number one. You've been married for 22 years this July, and your wife's name is?
Sally.
Sally. And she's good friends with Amy Nelson.
Correct. Yeah, Amy was in our wedding.
Yeah.
And Sally was in Amy's wedding.
And Chris's
they
wedding.
went to high school. Yeah.
Yeah. So Amy has nothing but great things to say about you guys, obviously. But so you have three wonderful kids, two daughters, 16 and 13, and a 10-year-old son. What's your kids' names from the oldest to youngest?
So Addison's our oldest,
Okay.
16-year-old, and then Peyton is our middle child, daughter as well, and then Luke, our 10-year-old son, and he's my little mini-me.
He's your mini you, dude.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Pretty cool. Man, you've been blessed for sure.
Definitely.
All right, you've been involved with agricultural most of your life. You believe you pay your bills with a 40-hour work week. And I want to really dive in on that. I'll just... as a farmer, I mean, agriculture, 40 is kind of like the minimum, right? Like usually farmers work 80 and...
Yeah, kind of barrier to entry.
Yeah.
And I, besides agriculture, like I talk with our kids about this, not overly exceptional at anything, but we can outwork anybody. And that's where you get ahead. That's where the difference is made. So we kind of use the saying, it's like you pay your bills with 40 hours, you make a life above and beyond that. So if you want things or to do things that others don't do, you need to do what they're not willing to do.
Yeah, dude, I love that, man. Yeah, so you build a life with the hours after that, which is what you just said. Your parents have been married for 61 years.
It actually might be even longer than that. I was trying to think about that. My dad was born in 40, or my mom was born in 42 and she was 19. So I think it's actually 63 years.
Okay.
So 63 years of marriage.
Wow. I think that's incredible, by the way. That's unheard of, by the way. You're born and raised Catholic, 12 years private school. You're a college football player at Western Oregon.
Yes, sir.
It was Western Oregon State College.
No, it was WOU at that time. We just transitioned
Western
to
Oregon
D2
University.
at that time, yeah.
That tells you I went there a few years before you. So you're a black belt in Taekwondo. And the last thing is your shirt I noticed was gym rat. You look like you might work out a little bit.
We do. So the continued workouts have been a part of just the regiment.
Yeah.
One, to stay fit and in shape. And two, a lot of reasons. One, I kind of want to continue to set the bar high for what can be done. Stress relief, personal health, and kind of taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, amen to that.
Putting that as a priority. Yeah.
Okay. So who do you work out with when you say we?
Well, I think you know a few of those guys. We've got a morning workout group. It's actually started with Jim Sparkman and myself. And Jim's
Sparky?
Sparky
Really?
with Home Smart. So
No kidding.
Jim and I, our two oldest daughter, or his daughter, Riley, and Addison are in the same class. And shoot, this is probably 6 or 7 years ago. We both have busy professional lives and kind of started our accountability with 5:30 in the morning workouts. Go hit an hour and a half workout.
Yeah.
Well, for guys in their 40s and 50s to be able to have a network of a like-minded or accountability with other members, that quickly grew into kind of what is now a pretty significant group. We have 10 to 12 that's there pretty much every day with others that touch into that circle. There's probably 25. And so it started with Jim and I, and then it kind of grew. A week later, we had another and another and another. And then that same group transitioned into a Thursday morning men's group. And I know we were going to talk about maybe some of that a little bit later. But, one of the things about being a man that if we're starting to kind of get into some of the vulnerability of how things go.
Let's dive in, man.
So as we dive in, okay, we're providers and protectors, and so first and foremost is, okay, our faith, our loyalty to our spouse, and then to be a good husband and father. So as we're putting all of those together, it's like what gets sacrificed a lot is our relationships, our side relationships. I would say, those best friends, those male best friends, those tight bonds become fewer and fewer as husbands and fathers. We're trying to make the best decisions for our family. And if I travel a lot. If I'm traveling, I don't want to take away my time with my wife or take away time with my kids to go golfing with the buddies or to go fishing or to go out and about where now that attention's going elsewhere. So there becomes just kind of a missing gap. And the longer that goes, I mean, I've really found kind of with our 40 and 50-year-old group, that bond and that connection to be able to relate on that level and to be able to be honest and share with each other is pretty special. Because it's more difficult to be vulnerable. It's more difficult to talk about, okay, we had great friends in high school. We had great friends in college. But now, hey, you're 15, 20 years into marriage. Yeah. Who do you lean on? Mm-hmm. Who do you lean on when you say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Hey, I'm struggling with a work-life balance. Hey, I want to continue to push and grow and kind of do some things financially for our family, but I'm struggling with how does that relate with, okay, church teachings or perceptions in society or, kids' school schedules and to be a driver, achiever, balance, those are those dynamics and conversations we like to have. Yeah.
Well, and that group of guys that you hung around in college probably thought a little differently than maybe when you're married for 22 years.
Exactly.
So those behaviors were different than what you want to exemplify.
Exactly.
Today.
And those relationships and, as we talk about who you want to surround yourself with, those friends from high school, those friends from college, they were all there for a reason and there for a season of time. Yeah. And so as friendships evolve, as relationships evolve, it doesn't make that less special for what it was and where it was at the time. But, college buddy that is not married and still lives a life similar to that I had in college. Hey, that was a special time in my life. Yeah. That relationship may have been there when we needed it. Yeah. But now, is that the healthiest relationship? No, not necessarily. But do I still love that friend? Do I still appreciate that time with that friend, their influence in my life at that time? Yeah. But it's not necessarily going to be my day-to-day friend.
Right. Yep. Yep. Dude, I love this. Yeah, this is diving into the vulnerability. Let's go back though. I want to. Okay. What's really important is I love that your parents were married for 60 some years, and how did your mom and dad instill that work ethic? Because there's two things that my parents taught me. My parents were married for 49 and a half years. My mom passed away, and God took her home and had plans. And now my dad's almost 81. But there's two things that my parents gave me was love and work ethic. That's it.
And I would agree with both of those. So those were the two foundational things. My dad, he's still alive with us, and so this is now, I mean, he's in hospice care now, so we're starting to work towards a transition in life, and that's a whole nother adjustment, and I'm the youngest in our family. So there are those times where I'm trying to kind of process, okay, what's the message and what are the things, what am I appreciative of, and the life lessons, and there's a lot of reflection that's been going on through all of this, and trying to verbalize that with him as well, But with that being said, my dad grew up in southern Idaho, relatively, I mean, my grandfather was a welder. He grew up in a small town. It was work, and you worked for subsistence. There we go.
There you go. Work that one out.
Yeah. You work to survive. And then as he went into education, he's very much a strong, faith-filled man. And he dedicated 45 years to Catholic education. Well, that's not necessarily a big financial ticket. on the education side of things. So summers were spent working to continue to, summers working on the farm.
Yeah.
And we had local friends that my brothers worked on the farm. My dad worked on the farm. My mom drove the berry bus. And that just became what the family's expectations were. Cutting wood on weekends. And it was just like you worked to do the things that you do. And I think they most definitely instilled that from a young age. All my siblings are all very hard workers, and we kind of take a lot of pride in being hard workers. From a faith-filled standpoint, my dad's been a rock and the example for that for our family. For my entire
How many siblings do you have?
So I'm the youngest of 5.
Okay. Tell me about them. Boy, girl?
So there's 3 boys, 2 girls. My oldest sister, she's actually 14 years older than I am.
She's the boss.
She's the boss. She's the type A.
Oh, type A. I totally get
it.
And
then my next brother's a year younger. So he's 13 years older than I am.
Yeah.
And then I've got another brother that's 9 years older than I am. And then I've got a sister that's 3 years older than I am.
Are you closest to your youngest sister then?
So yes and no. So we kind of grew up as 2 separate families. My relationship with my older siblings when I was a kid, my older sister moved out when she was 18, and I was 4.
Yeah.
So that relationship actually evolved really a lot more when I got into high school. She moved back. My brother-in-law's fantastic, and was very much a part of their lives, and they would involve me with a lot of things.
So
and
cool.
I build their fence for them or do yard work for them. It was just like they would help take us on trips or do things like that. Very much, I would say they were the first ones to kind of hit into a higher financial acumen level.
Yeah.
And then my oldest brother, he ended up going to OIT, got married, ended up becoming a vice president at IBM.
Dang.
So my 2 older siblings, as I began to evolve, really became mentors into my life as I'm looking for development, professional development, kind of words of wisdom as I'm trying to navigate college, next steps through college. What are you doing for mentorship? Who are you reaching up to? What books are you reading? And then that's when really things evolved. So my relationship got tighter and tighter. My closest sister in age, of course, we fought like brothers and sisters because we grew up almost like 2 separate families. And, love her to death. But as that went, we had the typical sibling relationship, and we still kind of jab at each other because we're the closest in those. And then my middle brother went off to the service. He was a heavy farm guy in terms of working on the farms throughout his time. And then now he does really well, kind of travels all around and is an engineer and builds sites and plants for Amazon all over. And
man, your mom and dad definitely instilled work ethic. I can see the whole family just all in on that.
Yeah.
So where did you grow up at? Where's home for you when you grew?
Growing up, I grew up in Hillsboro up until I was 12. So it's kind of a split question. I get that. When I was in 7th grade, we moved to Staten. But my elementary, early years, born and raised in Hillsboro. Summertime was spent on, like say, Unger Farms up there is where we spent the time. My brothers were irrigators. My dad drove truck. Then they ended up running combines and cucumber crews and strawberry picking crews. And I was always just tagging along during that window. And then my dad ended up he was a Jesuit, coached and taught at Jesuit, I think, for 14, 15 years, and then left Jesuit and became the principal down at Regis in Staten. So moved 7th grade there. Okay, dad's the local principal, So there's some dynamics as a junior high kid moving into a new small town community with your dad being the principal. And, I wouldn't say it's any different than probably the normal struggle years of junior high trying to figure things out. But, went in through that. And from the work ethic standpoint, I think I was in 7th or 8th grade. That summer, I started working for a berry packing plant out in Staten, and just spent the summer working. And then that transitioned into a landscaper that I worked for with Toby's Land Service, or Toby's Landscape. And then started working for Q-Dale Farms when I was 16 and got my license. And it just kind of kept plugging away. And then when I was 19, I needed a job in college to help pay for things. So football, small school football doesn't pay all the bills. Right. And so worked while I went to school and played football. And I asked the coach, I was looking for a job, and he had a connection at Simplot. So I just started at the bottom bagging fertilizer and sweeping the scale. And then it just evolved into a 23-year career there.
Wow. So go back to high school real quick. So what sports did you play besides football in high school?
So football and baseball were my two primary.
Yeah. Okay.
And played all the way through senior year.
Okay.
Had the chance to possibly do some JC baseball or football, and football was my passion. So
that was your passion?
That was my passion.
What position did you play?
I was a third baseman.
Okay. Baseball.
In baseball. And then in football, I was an outside linebacker.
Okay.
Graduated. My dad had played college ball with Pokey Allen. Pokey Allen was coaching at Boise State.
Yeah.
So I went as a walk-on to Boise State. That was actually the year Pokey Allen died of cancer. Houston Nutt came in, which was cool. I got to do college ball with Houston Nutt, who then went to Arkansas and then went to Ole Miss, and so that was fun. I was a typical egotistical freshman, and I thought I was better than I was. Got done with spring ball, and they had summer workouts planned and said that I needed to get extra work in, and I'd be a player my junior, senior year and needed to really work at it. I'm like, what do you mean I got to work at it?
Come on.
And I'd had an open offer from Western Oregon that, hey, if you want to come back. And so I ended up calling Blaine Bennett at the time. And he said, hey, summer workouts start here, here, and here. And I could work on the farm and still hit summer workouts. And then
so the rest you played 3 more years at Western?
I redshirted at Boise State.
Okay, so you have 4
So
more
then I
years.
had 4 at Western. And was a 3-year starter. And it was great. Was able to meet my wife.
So you and your wife both went to Western?
Yeah, my wife met my senior year in college.
Okay.
And that was, speaking of like history and my parents' longevity in marriage. Well, when my wife and we met in a small business management class, or actually it was small business opportunities.
And who was the teacher in there? Because I went to Western as well.
Oh, gosh, I can't remember. Oh, man. All I can remember is this hot girl that walked in front of me.
That's where we're at.
That's where we're at at that age.
Yeah,
in fact, I was kind of like to say the highly confident football guy in the back, and I look at my buddies and I'm like, hey, that was
mine.
I did. I claimed
her.
I did. I claimed it. I'm like, that one's mine.
It worked.
And at the time, I had been partying a lot. And so to be able to have a good conversation with a girl in class was kind of like out of my element.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm used to having conversations at a party, but not necessarily
maybe after a few beers.
When I'm being vulnerable in the middle of class.
It's called liquid courage, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. Liquid courage was definitely part of that.
Yeah.
Well, we started to kind of flirt back and forth throughout the term. And then the last day of the term, walked her out to her car, and we actually walked by. I had a junky old Dodge. I mean, it's just a piece of garbage. I walked right by it. Didn't even point it out that was mine.
Yeah.
Walked her to her car. It was right before Christmas break, and we exchanged numbers. And she asked what I was doing for break, and I said, well, no, I'm around. She was actually the first one that just said, hey, you want to maybe get together? I'm like, absolutely I do. So, props to my wife for being stronger than I am.
And where was she from?
She's right here from Kaiser.
She's from Kaiser. She's that's right. She grew up with Amy.
Yep, with Amy.
That's right. Okay.
So then this is kind of ties a few of the things in together. But on our first date, I had her over for dinner, and I like to cook. So I
mac and cheese. Okay.
Yeah. No, actually, I mean it was venison. I mean, I'm the cook in our family. So and it's gone for a long time. I started cooking when I was 12.
Yeah.
And had her over for a nice dinner, and then that night we just. Our whole evening was conversation, and it went 6 hours of just back and forth. And at that time, my parents had been married 40 plus years. Her parents had been married 35 years. She was born and raised Catholic. I was born and raised Catholic. She's one of 4 kids. I'm one of 5 kids.
It's a perfect storm.
Yeah, she's working. At the time she's working at the bank. I'm still working at the farm in Simplot, and kind of have these different things. And we just immediately connected. And then from that point on, like the rest was history. I was like, wow, she's special. And that was that.
How soon until you guys got married after college? Because that was your senior year.
That was my senior year. We're the same age, but
you're 46.
I am 46. Well, hey, that's another dynamic. So I married a cougar.
Okay,
so
she's older. Yeah.
She's 6 months older than I am. We graduated the same year.
That's
She's
hilarious.
6 months older than I am.
Yeah.
She hates it when I say that. So she had her birthday in February.
Okay.
And for 22 years, when she has her birthday, I have my birthday.
Okay.
So technically, I'm 45. I'm 45.
Oh, okay.
And I'll be 46 in August.
Okay.
But it's kind of anticlimactic by the time my birthday rolls around.
Yeah. What day is your birthday?
August 3rd.
August 3rd. Cool.
Yeah.
Good month.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, then you date for a while. How long until you guys get married?
Oh gosh, you got to ask me that. It was pretty quick. Because I know, we dated. My parents moved up to Alaska after I graduated college that year, and I drove them up. And I remember that's when I talked with my mom about wanting to propose. And so, I mean, I was
so cool.
6 months, 9 months into it.
Yeah,
and
she's the one.
It was 6, 7 months into it, and I knew. Kind of went back, and then I asked her father and asked her mom, just for permission.
Yeah.
And I took an audio tape, so I recorded it. I mean, we didn't have cell phones that could record this stuff, so I had a little cassette tape and kind of went and asked them and recorded it. So then I used that in the proposal. I blindfolded her coming into her house. She thought I was making her dinner and had this thing playing, and then I ended up proposing with flowers, and
that's pretty cool.
And her parents approving of me doing it. So
awesome.
And then so it was that year. Gosh,
but it was soon. It was shortly after.
It was shortly after, and then I think we were engaged for a solid year.
Okay,
and then married.
Cool. Your degree was business, you said?
Degree in health and a minor in business.
Okay,
and that is just pure dumb luck.
Okay.
So when I went to school, I changed my major 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, typical.
And then I thought I was going to go into education. About my senior year, I took my CBEST and MSAT and passed those. But at the time, they wanted subject area tests passed, and I still had another 2 terms to go, and I hadn't taken my subject area test. Yeah. And then I was still working at Simplot through college, and I started to find out what guys made income-wise, especially top salespeople. And when I heard that, I was like, whoa, okay. It's about, a couple of the guys were making 3, 4 more, 5 times more than a starting salary of a teacher.
Yeah. That's way more exciting than
it
making
is way more
50,
exciting.
60,000.
And I knew with my dad being a teacher coach, I know what the commitment level is, and being a collegiate athlete, I know what that commitment level is. And if I'm going to put that kind of work and effort into it, I wanted to have a financial kick at the can. I wanted to have the financial reward, not just if I'm going to leave my wife alone for 4 or 5 months coaching a season, from 6 o'clock in the morning till midnight, and it's all headspace goes there, and I'm not going to get the financial reward. Okay, that's not necessarily worth it. But if I could build a business, build kind of the sales where that sacrifice is worth it financially. And it has been. So then I made that change, and I'd had enough credits that I met with the financial aid, and they're kind of like, hey, you need to graduate with something. Yeah. You got to, I think at the time you needed, I can't remember, 180 credits, and I had 216. And it's like, just take this class and this class, and you got a degree in health and a minor in business. And I'm
there
like,
you go.
Okay, boom, take
Done.
2 classes, graduate, check the box.
Yeah.
And then started working full time at Simplot. And then evolved from there.
Are you still currently at Simplot?
I am not.
So you worked there for a long time.
Yeah, I worked there for 23 years in a lot of different roles and positions. So, it was, like I say, starting at the bottom up. That first summer, a lot of times they lay people off. And, this, I think, is a good lesson for anybody. Yeah. I went to the management and I said, hey, I'd like to continue to stay on. I'll scrub toilets, I'll paint, I'll scrape, I'll clean the pits. I'll do whatever you need to have done. And so that willingness to do kind of what needs to be done, then that allowed me to stay on kind of even during slow season. Yeah. Then I became part of maintenance, and, I ended up getting my CDL and was a truck driver, and then I started running fertilizer
Is there anything
plants.
you don't do, Tim? You're like, I wouldn't call it a jack of all trades, but you do a lot of things.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
No, I think you, but you're a guy that's also very committed on everything you do. So maybe jack of all trades, but you master many, it seems.
And if I want to do something, I kind of want to put my full effort into it.
Yeah.
I really don't believe in kind of half-assing something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if it's going to be like, if it's game on, it's game on. And I don't know. That's just kind of the way.
So what company do you work for now?
So now I work for a chemical manufacturer by the name of Atticus. They're based out of Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yeah.
I had a stint in between. Oh gosh! So Simplot had made some acquisitions. Yep. I was leading a national wholesale team, and then during this they made $1 billion acquisition. We're changing departments around. I went over to be a national account sales manager for corporate farms. In the meantime, I had a relationship with this other company where I had sold a lot of their products in the past. Two owners that were looking to transition the leadership of the company. They'd had the company for 25 years. They're kind of looking to step back. Family members weren't ready to run the company. And he'd been talking to me for about 5 years. Hey, I want you to come work for me. I want you to come work for me. And then at one point he's like, hey, we want to step back and we want you to come run the company. And then I'm like, okay, well now that was a different conversation. I said, okay, now we're having a real conversation. And then that conversation led to me getting hired as vice president of the company. Yeah. So it allowed me to get executive level experience without relocating. Those would have been my next steps at Simplot were executive levels, but I would have had to move to Boise. Yeah. So with our life, with our family and the kids and schools and the way that we had our balance set up, it was a good move. And it was a good income bump at the time.
I bet.
And then I kind of quickly transitioned and then became president and CEO of the company and chairman of the board. So during that 3-year time span, I learned a ton. So I was kind of running each department, kind of setting forth kind of the company messaging going forward and key relationships with our customers and the way that things went. And unfortunately, the two owners had some family differences between them. And long story short, I was in the middle. And so spent about six months trying to navigate that between both sides. And I didn't necessarily see a way out of that. And then during that time, I had met the owner of the company I work for now. Okay. And he's the most impressive individual I'd ever met within agriculture. I'm very, very impressed with him. And so we just started speaking the same lingo and motivation and talk. And he has grown and expanded multiple companies and scaled them to high levels. And I had thought, okay, this is a guy that I can be mentored by and learn from. Yeah. And when I kind of saw the writing in the wall between the two family members where I was at, it was time to make a change. And so I made the change this last December, and it's been excellent. So I'm 5 months into. So
you're 5 months into.
I'm 5 months into the new gig.
Okay, are you loving it?
I am. You know, we talked a little bit about the travel. The travel is just another dynamic to figure out. There's pros and cons. Yeah. You know, and with that, we sit down as a family and talk about it. When I was with Simplot, I traveled. I worked from home and I traveled. Yeah. And then when I took the job down in Junction City, it was like, okay, well, I'm going to commute. I'll be home most nights, but I'm an hour and a half away. And that means, okay, I'll be home for dinner, but I'm not going to necessarily be able to coach your teams or do some of those things. And at that time, the family was like, hey, no, we have you home all the time. Yeah. But I think it is what you make of it. Yeah. Because now I travel, but when I'm not, I'm at home. And then how do I set up my work-life balance when I'm home of being able to help get the kids to practice, help with their practice, do the one-on-ones, have the special times that we want to have, and just be purposeful with kind of everything that we're doing.
I think the lesson that we as guys can really take from this here is you bring your wife and your kids into the conversation as to what your life looks like. Mm-hmm. It's not just, hey, I'm the guy, because most guys, you know, we go to work and we justify our long work hours. Mm-hmm. We justify whatever it is because, well, we bring home the money. Mm-hmm. And I think what's different about you is that you're disciplined enough and you love your wife enough and your kids enough to, like, you bring them in the conversation and you guys make decisions together. That's huge, man. And
we do, and it's not perfect. Right. I mean, it's not perfect. I mean, and there's those times where it's like, well, you know, but it's having that conversation to understand where each other stand on certain things. And it's like, okay, well, what's the best decision kind of going forward? You know, my previous 6 months before making the job change were miserable. So she was like, absolutely 100% supportive. Like, yes, we need we need the old you back. You know, I mean, really, because it was when you're kind of going through a grind, it can knock you back, you know, and I've been able to kind of get, I guess, my swag back.
I bet your wife likes that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, let's talk about marriage for just a moment. I mean, you guys have been married for 22 years, and I always say marriage is probably the most challenging relationship we as guys have. You're married to someone of the opposite sex.
Yep.
You think completely different. You come from two different families. How do you make it work?
It takes
work. And what
work.
are the challenges in marriage? Because I know you and I had a conversation briefly. Just, you know, we're guys. We struggle with whatever.
I think that, communication in most of the time, and it goes, and again, we're not perfect. Like, we still go through these things where, okay, and now as time goes on, we at least know how to kind of bring it up with each other. Right. But early on, you know, I think first and foremost, it's the commitment to each other. I mean, and that's what I love about, like, we have a never quit mentality. Okay. So it's like, we could still be pissed off at each other. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that we're both going to go do something stupid or going to make a change. We have a commitment to each other, and there's not an out. Right. So if we have that fundamental belief and we know that, then we know that we can kind of work through whatever we need to work through. You know, hey, just we're pro fans. I want to say maybe 10 years into our marriage, after we started having some kids, we needed to go through some marriage counseling. Yeah. And that was very helpful. And I'd say really some things that I needed to hear because of assumptions that I was making. You know, my family dynamics were being raised were completely different than hers. And so maybe some things that I thought, okay, that's the way it needs to be, might have been like, okay, well, there's an alternate way, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're right and right and wrong. So there was a lot of internal work that went in on that go round. And then, you know, another 5 or 10 years later, 7 years later, we hit counseling again. And it's like, hey, we got to kind of work through some things here. And so I think that that's healthy. Now, the other thing that tying in between counseling and then we read the 5 love languages.
Boom.
And the 5 love languages is, like I say, when we kind of read that, and then we took the quizzes and figure out, okay, what's yours, what's mine, and we're different. You know, we're different people. And so even now, it's kind of like we can sit down with each other, and if we have some friction or we're just not on the same page, it's like, okay, what am I not? Here's what I'm trying to do to speak your love language and make sure we have open communication. Okay, here's what I'm missing on what I'm not feeling. I know you're doing this, this, and this, but by the way, it's not my love language, and I really don't care. I mean, that's cool that you're doing it, but these other 2 things, you know, I mean, I think like most men, I'm a, hey, slap me on the ass and tell me I'm doing a good job, and I can do freaking anything. But if I don't get that physical touch or I don't get the
words of affirmation,
then it's kind of like, you know.
And she's not going to buy your flowers and change your life is what you're saying.
Correct. And so like now, you know, as a husband, it's like, okay, well, hey, let me see. I want to do the dishes. I want to drop off some flowers. I want to get some coffee. Okay. I want to, like, you know, kind of do all these things. I want to, you know, make sure I give her physical attention when she gets home, you know, tell her how beautiful she is and how much she means to me. And it's like, okay, hey, I'm still trying to check all the boxes. What's the most important on what we're putting together? So it's a work in progress. It's always a work in progress.
There you go.
And then so
you know, I love that you guys read the 5 love languages. I think you know, my wife and I have done that. It's been a while. We probably could go redo that. In fact, we're going on vacation this next week, and we have a book that we're going to read together. It's a book called Practicing the Way by John Mark Comer. He's probably one of my favorite authors. My Bible is my favorite book, but as an author, John Mark Comer he just speaks my language, and so. But those are things that it's work in process. Like, we've been married for 32 years, and guess what? I got to give every day. It's kind of like my golf game. I don't care what I did yesterday. Will I go out and play the same way or better? And that's the same way with my wife. I have to step up my game.
Well, congratulations. I mean, 32 years, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's not been perfect, right?
Yeah.
And I think most guys would say counseling is weakness, but I would say counseling is the greatest gift you guys can do for each other. So my hat's off to that.
I absolutely agree. And it's to say, yeah, we don't know it all.
Yeah.
And I would say that's been a strength that has helped me. And I get a lot of that from my dad. My dad was a very confident, humble man. And so to be able to be, okay, how are you confident and humble? And I think I hold myself and carry myself with a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
But that also means like I can be humble enough to be like, hey, I need improvement here. I need this feedback here. I know I'm not perfect. I know I'm far from perfect. I mean, talk about buddies and I, like especially college guys, as we kind of go back and forth, it's like, hey, it doesn't mean we still don't screw up. We just try to make the dumb decisions further apart.
Exactly.
It's like how much further apart can we make these decisions?
Yep. We're still knucklehead guys,
exactly.
man.
And it doesn't mean I'm going to be perfect, but I'm just trying to get better every day.
Well, Tim, you're the kind of guy that has discipline, and I think discipline is some of those things that I've struggled with. As far as a daily routine. What are your priorities? What does an ordinary day look like for you? Because you're on the road traveling a lot too. I'm like, what's that workout look like when you're on the road? Because it'd be easy, like, I don't feel like it, or maybe there's no gym at the hotel, or
traveling is tough. So when I was in North Carolina the week prior, I actually timed some things so that I went to bed earlier because I knew I was going to be getting up earlier. I planned my workout schedule and even kind of what I wanted to eat in the mornings prior to my workout, because when I go to North Carolina, there's an awesome gym there. Yeah. And I kind of have a little sequence built out. Then I could be done with my workout by 7 in the morning. And then get ready for the day or the day at the office or whatever we have going on. This last week in Arizona, it was tougher. We had customer meetings from 7 a.m. till 10 o'clock at night. And then when it's in that routine, it's a little bit more I focus on my sleep, focus on trying to drink enough water. And then when it comes to eating, when you're eating out all the time, at least be somewhat responsible with that so that it doesn't get carried away.
That's good though. It sounds like you're prioritizing. What you do want to work out when you're getting, when you're in meetings like 7 to 10 p.m. Sleep and water.
Well, with some of that, and we started to kind of touch base on this. I quit drinking alcohol 2.5 years ago.
That's right.
So as that goes, that's been a big thing that actually helps keep me on point and keep me sharp, especially when traveling.
How long had you been drinking?
Oh man, it's been a roller coaster ride.
Sure.
So like
College
anything else, pretty good. Obviously, pretty good high school kid. Dad's the principal, and then you dabble around a little bit, get into college, and I go wild. It was just kind of freedoms of college. Went pretty wild and crazy. Then got married, and some of those college habits of the college drinking kept going. When my oldest daughter was born, I think when we pre-called on this, touched base a little bit, I did some drinking and driving with her in the car, and I didn't want my wife to know how much I was drinking. So that was my wake-up call. Luckily, I picked my wife up one day, and she's like, "You're freaking hammered, and you got our newborn daughter in there." And that's when it was like a wake-up call for me to be like, man, I'm willing to hide and sacrifice my family, put my daughter at risk. And then I quit drinking, and I quit drinking at that moment. Just on my own, kind of made that mental note where I'm like, I got to break this habit that I'm in. And I try to kind of use different motivation and different reasons. One is I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. Yeah. So it was not to say I'm never going to drink again. It's just to say I am in control of this. And I made the statement, I'm going to do this for a year. My wife didn't have any influence on that decision. It was just mine. And then when I shared, of course, she's supportive. She thought it was a great idea, but it has to be your decision. And I made that decision. And then through that, I became better and better and better with work, with focus, with family. Our relationship got stronger. My attention to detail, my focus with work got better and better. And that year was my first year getting into sales, and my income doubled. So I went, that was a significant deal as a young married couple to have your income double. Well, then after a year, I'm like, hey, this is going so good. I don't want to screw this up. I'm going to go year 2. Well, year 2, then my income doubles again. And then it's like, okay, now And then from that point on, I was like, I didn't want to screw some things up. And so it went about 8 years. And then I started kind of getting back into, okay, well, I'm going to put some bumpers up. All right, if I'm in a safe spot, I can have a beer, 2 beers, but I'm just going to leave it at beer. And that was good for a while until really that little ebb and flow kind of went until it started to gain more and more momentum into like 2018. Mm-hmm. I was taking on a really big project where I was away a lot and I was drinking a lot during that time period. Yeah. And then those habits crept back in. And then once I became vice president at Orcal, then I became president, started running the company. At the time, we'd just started a 30-acre farm here in Salem. So we've got a farm going. Right after 2020, the fires up in Detroit happened. We had a house up there that burned down. So I started,
Really?
I'm generaling the project with our partner on that deal. So general the rebuild project, got a brand new farm starting. I'm a new president CEO of a company. And the owner of that company happened to drink a lot. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of social drinking going in on that. And I just made that decision at that time. I'm like, I cannot afford to have 1 minute of not being at my best.
Yeah.
I just needed to be sharp all the time. Too many things.
And that decision right then could have been catastrophic because I'm easily influenced with people. And so, but you made a conscious decision. No.
So I made a conscious decision, and then I try to kind of use, like I say, motivation, different things. I think I even read on this. I want to kind of reconnect and make sure I'm putting my wife, my family, my kids first, be the loving husband and father and provider that I'm kind of called to be and that I want to be. Yeah. And so that was really my driving force and motivation. And then I linked it back to my previous success that I'd had. I'm like, okay, well, I'm making a lot more money now. You know what? If I can clean my shit up, if my income can double, this is a big deal. This is okay. So that's how I've kind of used my motivation to kind of continue that drive. Yeah. And now I would say for me, kind of second time going through this, I'm much more at peace, much more comfortable. Yeah. I have zero desire, and I'm in social settings and I take customers out all the time. And I have zero desire for alcohol now. Yeah. Like it's just out of my life. And I feel really good about it,
It's good, man. Yeah, I mean, alcohol, it could be fun during the season, college, whatever. Yep. But overall, to keep your goals, if you know your income could double, if you just cleaned up your life and be more focused and be more present, you're going to communicate better with your wife. And I mean, wow, you were busy during that 2020 season.
That 2020 season was...
Has it slowed down? The house is rebuilt.
The
farm's going.
The farm is going. Now, I'm taking on a new work career deal. So there's a lot of learning and drinking from a fire hose of information kind of coming out and meeting the sales reps that kind of report up and get to know their customer base and new customer base. Yeah. And, so there's a lot of learning going on there, but it's I don't know. I enjoy... And this is just where I don't know how I'm wired or it is different. Yeah. I enjoy the journey. I enjoy the grind.
Okay.
Because I take a tremendous amount of pride in that. Yeah. The harder it is, the better. Because I know everybody else is going to quit.
That's right.
So the competition at the top is not that many. I mean, it's
almost none.
At none. The barriers to entry at the bottom, everybody, hey, this is going to be great. What's going to happen at the first obstacle? Right. What's going to happen at the first challenge? What's going to happen when you get told no the first time? Yeah. Or somebody says, hey, that's stupid. And it's like, hey, no, you might think that, but this is where I'm going. Yeah. And I'll make the calls. I'll do the research. I'll put the hours in. I'll do the things. And just make it work.
And where does that come from, that grind? Is it a book you read? Was it a mentor you had? Is it, what is that? We want to know.
Drew, we talk about this. I have no freaking idea. I mean, I really don't. I've tried to kind of reflect and think upon this, one of which has been, I've watched my family, my parents struggle financially by being so devoted to service to others, to the church, to this and that, and it's hindered some financial progress. And they never made decisions for money, made it for the family, made it for God, made it for what which is commendable, which I love. But I didn't ever want to be in a position to where I couldn't afford something And that's kind of where that came. I think, I feel so fortunate to have the family that I grew up in, unconditional love by both my mother and father, unconditional love throughout everything. I think it also helps that I was the youngest too.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit more grace involved with me, as things went up. Obviously always emulated, looked up to my father. He was a college baseball player, college football player, went on, played semi-pro baseball, was drafted by the Rams, so I grew up as that kid that, hey, I'm a football baseball player. That's what I do.
Yeah.
My dad was a C student, and so I was like, hey, all I got to do is pass.
Caesar degrees, man. As far as I'm
exactly. Caesar degrees. So I really, I didn't put any energy or effort into school other than passing. I mean, that was just kind of the way that things were.
Yeah.
When I met my wife, when I met Sally and we were dating, I really actually started to clean some things up, and obviously more time with her, better influence, better decision making. And then I actually started to do very well. I mean, I was taking physiology of exercise and some high-end classes, and I'm acing those because I'm actually staying focused.
Yeah.
But I could probably honestly say, up and through my high school and probably college, I think I could tell you I never read a book cover to cover, ever. I pretty good at retaining information. You tell me something, I'm pretty good at retaining that. So I knew if I went to class and I paid attention and I took notes, I could get a C or B. I don't need to read anything else. I don't need to do anything else. I got enough, and the teacher could see I'm making an effort.
Yeah.
Okay, I can pass. We got married. I think my mother-in-law, and she ended up giving us a book called Smart Couples Finish Rich.
Okay.
It was by David Bach.
I got the book.
Dude, it's a fantastic book. And then the other book I bought was Home Buying for Dummies, because we hadn't bought a home yet.
Yeah.
So my wife, Sally's working for Fidelity.
Yeah.
She's in the title business. Yeah. All right, hey, what's the next thing you do? You buy a house. How do you buy a house? Yeah. Okay, I read Home Buying for Dummies. But when I read Smart Couples Finish Rich, I just absorbed it. And I think since that point, I have not read a fiction book. I mean, I haven't read a fiction book. So I only read nonfiction. Yeah. I only read to get better.
Same.
And as that clicked, I mean, I'm just highlighter. I'm taking notes. I started learning about, debt management and compounding interest and ways to continue to get raises with work and how mentorship works and setting goals and this whole thing. And I'm like, I've never heard any of this before. And I just absorbed it. Well, then that led into kind of like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Well, then I wanted to have the alternate to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That led into Dave Ramsey. Yeah. And then then that eventually led into more like sales, motivation, goal books. And then I just became really kind of like a personal development junkie through that, but had a lot of success with it because that then I could take, and especially within a sales or a manager role, because I was a manager, I could immediately start implementing these things I learned. Hey, I've never heard of this before. And I start doing it and it works. And I'm like, wow. Okay.
So actually be a student of the book you're reading instead of just reading books for the sake of reading.
Correct.
Which is what most people do.
And so now, as I go through, I'll kind of read, highlight, journal, take notes or whatever. And as I'm looking for it, I'm just looking for one thing that creates the spark or the idea that makes a difference. And so it doesn't mean I'm not a full-fledged believer, because even like on that Smart Couples Finish Rich, there's one chapter, and I recommend that book all the time, but at the tail end, he talks about having split finances with your spouse. I 100% disagree with that. I think the entire rest of the book is excellent, and I took all of that, but I'm like, no, I think there needs to be transparency with your spouse in terms of financing goals and what you're trying to work on. But you definitely can't try to segment that. And I think anytime you're hiding or having privacy, it's like, no, we need to have that. This is a we thing. This is an us thing, not a you and me. Like you do you, I do me. It's like, no, this is us. So that's kind of how that development happened. And
what's the latest book you've read that you recommend?
So I'm reading a book right now called Spin Selling. It's really good. Really, there's a lot of terminology and words and phrases and ways of relating and asking questions in that I'd never heard of, even though I've been through a lot of different sales trainings. That one's fantastic. I just finished Good to Great. Good to Great was a good book. I mean, those are just the last two that are on my radar. I just picked up a new leadership book, and I realized I'd kind of gone through a few of the highlights on it, and I know that with my team, there's certain things that you can't necessarily treat everybody the same, and you can't train the same. Different people are on different levels, and so the way that you lead people at a different level depends on where their skill set is. And if you take one skill set and you happen to be a couple of levels different, then that communication doesn't work. So
how do you get some of your salespeople to buy into your leadership and actually? Do you recommend some of those books you're reading? Like, hey, I'm reading this book. This is great. You should consider reading it. What would you?
With my previous sales team, I made a mandatory reading.
Okay.
Some of this stuff, I try to set the expectations high and set the standards high. And if you want to be excellent, you want to achieve, you want to succeed, these are the things that we're going to do. And I'm not going to tell you, I'm going to do it with you.
Yeah.
And if I really struggle with average, I have high expectations. So average or less than average, then that kind of goes away pretty quick. And I don't necessarily have a lot of time. I can kind of present and put options out there, and then, okay, what is it that you want? What next steps would you like to take? How would you like to see some things develop? Where would you like to be? I'd like to help you get there. But if you're not willing to take the steps to do it, I'm not going to do it for you.
Right.
And, I might give you 2 or 3 or 4 chances at that. And my door will always be open. But after that time period, okay, time closes. And if they work for me, then it becomes, okay, well, I'm going to if they can't check those boxes of at least wanting to continue to grow and develop, then I'm going to be looking for somebody that can continue to grow and expand. So we kind of set that standard and what the expectation is. But the Breakthrough Code, fantastic book, by the way.
Okay.
The Breakthrough Code, and it actually sequentially works out. We did it in a 3-week deal. So the first third of the book, and then the second third, and the third book. And we had everybody on the team write up what they took from that first third and what they're going to implement from it, and then the next third and the next third. And then it became actually a good team sharing and a team bonding. Wow. And we actually developed a lot of vulnerability through that, because we started to kind of say, okay, where's our strengths? What's our weaknesses? And what are we looking for?
Yeah. That's good.
So
that's a great takeaway right there. Yeah. Well, hey, we're going to wrap up here real quick, but the only thing I want to ask you really, Tim, is, what's your legacy? What do you want to leave for your wife and kids, the people you work with? What's important as you're 46, when you're 86? What's that look like?
Man, from a legacy standpoint, I listen to Ed Milet a lot.
I love Ed
Milet.
The Power of One More.
The Power of One More. As I'd say, when you want to look at, like, say, changing your family, the dynamics, the way things go, and what people think about, he talks about the story of, at some point in time, the one shows up and changes everything. I want to be the one.
Okay.
And that means, like, okay, what are our standards for our family?
Obviously
we kind of beat into the kids in terms of what the work ethic is that's required.
Yeah.
And that baseline stand. But with the kids now, we're sitting down, and when we have our financial conversations, they're a part of it.
Yeah.
When we look at retirement accounts, when we look at an investment, when we look at real estate, if we're doing something, we've got our 16 and our 13 and our 10-year-old son there, and they know. And it's like, hey, we're building and educating you on how all of this works. This is ours. But understand this, you are in the circle of trust. This is not for you to share with anybody else. This, if your mother and I choose to share what we want to do or what we're investing with our friends or with our close people, that we're allowed to share that.
Yeah.
You better not freaking open your mouth when somebody asks, okay, what's going on, or what our financial plans are,
exactly.
Or this or that. But hey, super proud. My 16-year-old daughter, she works down at the bank. She's been, she paid for half her car.
I love that.
And then we just opened her first Roth.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like just baseline thinking of that. So I would say fundamentally, okay, a man of faith, hard work, dedicated and committed to the family, and dedicated to kind of changing and influence the lives of others around us.
Yeah.
That was born and raised with, hey, don't, thou shalt not lie. It's much easier to just tell the truth.
Yeah.
And my dad, I think once he told me, he's like, hey, if you don't lie, you don't have to remember your lies. Just speak the truth.
Yeah.
And that served me very well, and it served me very well in business. And sometimes telling the truth in business, that actually creates a lot more opportunities to have the real conversation that needs to happen versus trying to fudge some things around. And it's like, hey, no, yes, we can do that. No, we can't. Hey, sorry, this is what our goal is. This is what, you can, honesty is the best policy.
Well, it's the only way you build trust is telling the truth, Yeah. It's funny. I always ask the question, hey, do you like when I lie to you? No, I hate when you lie to me. Okay. So if I tell you the truth, are you okay with that? What's interesting, most people actually don't want to hear the truth. Mm-hmm. So you have to decide. Both are, in some people's eyes, are both bad. Mm-hmm. Don't lie to me. Don't tell me the truth because it hurts either way. Yep. I'm just going to default to the truth, and then here's the truth, and I love you, and that's what it's going to be. So,
well, and I've done different, similar. I think men can relate to this when you're talking with your spouse, and it's like, okay, am I listening and being supportive right now, or are you looking for feedback? That I need to.
That's a great question.
Let's define that. And so as my wife will maybe start sharing some things, and especially if it gets to work or business related, and I'm like, okay, I'm loving the conversation. Am I listening, or are you looking for feedback? And she'll be like, actually, I would like your feedback on this one. Okay, perfect, great.
If a guy would do that every time his wife spoke, because we want to go fix it, man.
Absolutely.
If you begin to tell me a problem, my brain's already on the solution. Yep. I probably have the answer, but yeah, you're right.
Because I'll go, you got this. Yeah. Which one do you want to do?
Well, the Bible verse I tie that to with, especially with my wife, is in James 1:19, 1:20. It says, "Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, for the anger of a man does not achieve the righteousness of God." God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and if I'll remember that, I'm in good shape. Anytime I open my mouth, I might be in trouble.
Yep, 100%. And that has served me. I 100% believe and agree with that. Yeah, it's better to be thought a fool than to open up your mouth and remove all doubt. Hey,
I just said that like especially like in a boardroom of guys or whatever.
Totally.
And you desperately want to say something. It's like, no. I'd better be thought a fool than to open my mouth and prove something. So I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. So anyway, well, hey, let's wrap up this podcast. Okay. Let's, for everyone listening every week, we really do appreciate you. Appreciate you, Tim. Just open up your life and sharing the deep things of, how you think and how you operate with your wife. And there's a lot of great advice here. So if you'd like to be on the podcast, we'd love to have you. We want you to be encouraged and inspired by the stories that we share and also to share your own. And then the verse that I want to leave you with here is John 3:16. It says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life." And really, that's our prayer and hope for you, is that you believe that God is the only way through Christ. And Tim, thanks again for being on our show today. Appreciate you, man. Amy has talked well of you guys for a while, you and Sally, and I loved hearing your story. I'm going to go back and listen to this because I think there's some nuggets in there I can pull out on discipline, really diving in, because I'm an average dude. I try to be more than average, but it's a struggle.
Well, it is. And thank you for having me on. This has been enjoyable. And I would just encourage anybody that wants to take a step. Everything is a struggle. And so it's kind of like, oh, hey, yeah, I got my fair share of garbage I'm working through all the time, and that's why there has to be some elements of discipline, because it's like, there's far from perfect, and there's steps to just continue to make an improvement each day, and encourage everybody to just take a step. Yep, take a step. Well, thank you, Tim. Appreciate you, man. And I might have you on again soon, man, because I think you have a lot to share, and this was good. So thank you very much. Yeah, anytime. This was fun. Okay. Thanks, have a great day. All right, you too.